when you ask, well, what will success get you? Okay, it will get me fame, it'll get me likes, it'll get me into big parties, whatever. Okay, well, then what will that get you? It will get me all the money. Okay, well, what will that get you? It will get me the yacht that I want and the parties that I want. Okay, well, what will that get you? Well, that will get me out to the sea, and then I won't have to work anymore. And you keep on going until it's like, well, that will get me, I'll feel relaxed. Okay, so you want to feel relaxed. That's what you want. The idea is that you can get that going at that slow pace. You can actually live life relaxed going at that slow pace. But you have externalized that feeling and said, I can't get that until this, until these things happen. I want to question that story.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Jazz Lab podcast. Today's episode, if you hadn't noticed, is a little bit different than usual. I'm not sitting in front of a piano, but that's because we have someone today who's going to be very, very special. Isaac Hunnewell, sitting right next to me here. Really glad to be here with you, Isaac. Isaac is actually a mindfulness coach and someone who has a deep background in psychology, mindfulness, spirituality, and also in music itself. Just a quick disclaimer that nothing in this video should be considered personal, clinical counseling, or therapy. If you feel that your mental health is at risk or you are feeling you have a serious issue you need to deal with, we of course advise you to seek clinical therapy. As I learned more about his incredible skills as a coach, I decided to give it a shot, and it's really allowed me to feel like I can connect so much more with my own music, the piano, and just overall enjoy making music and even hanging out with musician friends more. And we will definitely get into why that is in this episode. But I've said enough. I want to welcome our guest, Isaac Hunnewell. Isaac, welcome to the Jazz Lab.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now I'm excited to finally get some of your knowledge out to all the listeners and people out there who are listening or watching this video. So just to get started off, I was wondering if you would just fill everybody in about your background and a little bit about what you do.
Great. Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. I'm obsessed with human behavior. I have always been intrigued by people and why they do the things they do. Got my degree in psychology and did a lot of using my psychology degree when I went abroad. I went abroad. I lived in New York for a while, then living in Guatemala for 3 years and traveling and getting to know other cultures. And all this was to give me a chance to be with people and observe people and not just a homogeneous group of people. I was really spent my life meeting and working with and working for a tremendous diverse group of people. And that brought me back to clinical counseling with a desire to learn, to discern more, and to have a keener eye of really what people really needed in terms of their mental health and their what I soon to learn was also their like physical health, the psychosomatic paradigm of how the mind and the body are actually not separate.
And I'm very excited to get into that mind body connection with you. So I'm going to ask you a very general question just to start out.
Okay.
I think most of us have all experienced anxiety in our lives. So, just in general, I'm kind of curious if you could provide some insights on how you approach maybe changing one's relationship with anxiety.
Yeah. I mean, anxiety is an indication of a stress response in our body, neurobiologically, neurophysiologically, that seems to perceiving a threat. And so the stress response system kicks in, and anxiety is often a fight or flight response. So do I have to fight this threat, this perceived threat, or do I have to run? And so that all that energy has a neurobiology that can be a framework for understanding, like, oh, it's actually just a physical response that I'm having. Once you realize it's a physical response, then there are actually physical answers that can support you. Breathing, feeling your feet, and then asking yourself, is this perceived response actually, or excuse me, is this perceived threat actually a threat? And I don't want to say that. You asked a general question, so it's like a general answer, right? So that's not always the case. In a lot of in times, there's definitely where there are threats in many cases. Um, but you have to ask that question. So like one of the avenues, and there's several avenues, is to bring it into the body. Is to bring yourself into your body, feel that sensation. Even before you can name it, another avenue you can go when you're in the body. Yeah, so you recognize it as a stress response. Even before you put any cognitive frame on it, you can experience it only as sensation. Again, we're looking for sort of how can I find quote unquote solutions or management of my anxiety. Most people, when they ask that, they're already experiencing their anxiety. So can we actually find the answer like upstream, forward, farther down the stream of our anxiety?
Got it. Got it. And so, since I asked you this general question, I want to actually kind of go one step deeper now and get a little bit more direct when it comes to musicians,
Yeah.
because I think there are anxieties that many of us musicians experience quite frequently, quite commonly. And so I'm kind of curious to ask you about some of these and what thoughts you might have or different perspectives you might have. And a very common one that, of course, comes to mind is, what do you do if you have a gig coming up and you are just maybe even debilitatingly nervous about that gig? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, as a musician who has had a few gigs, I've been there. Mostly in the past because I found ways to really befriend my performance anxiety. So remember a time when you were anxious. Can you do that?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what purpose was anxiety serving? If you can talk to that part, what would it say that?
I think it would probably say it's trying to protect me from maybe a blunder. It's afraid that I am going to, go on stage and make a fool of myself. There's definitely a concern, I think, a lot of the time that I might also not look great to my peers, like the musicians that I work hard to earn their respect, you know?
So you may not receive belonging, love, and that makes you unsafe. So right there, you just showed love, safety, and belonging don't exist. If I make a blunder, if I fail, then these social beings are going to say, you failed. And now we can take that story and say to anxiety, I've made blunders before. I've failed before as a musician. And afterwards, people came up, congratulated me. People came up and showed me love, and the belonging was still there. And I felt safe and I made it through. So then you can begin to, if you are in that moment where that anxiety, where you're talking with that anxiety, you can remind it of actually the reality. And again, it goes back to the threat. It's sensing a threat. And so often when our bodies sense a threat, they're so focused on survival that they overestimate. They say they cast out a big threat net, you could say. And it's our jobs when befriending anxiety or fear to be like, is this actually, am I actually uh, in a threat?
Absolutely. And you're kind of bringing to mind one kind of huge overarching, I guess, concept that you've instilled in me in our work together has been the idea of essentially giving love to the part of you that is expressing that negative emotion or feeling. And so like when you're actually kind of describing that, it rings so true to me, because one thing I've gotten so much better at is, oh my God, I'm experiencing this overwhelming anxiety. And I used to just shut it down, do whatever I need to do to shut it down. Sometimes that was practice for 4 hours, or sometimes
Mhm.
that was work really hard, which, was me maybe turning that into a productive thing. Nevertheless, the whole time I was doing it, I was feeling anxiety.
Yeah.
And, what's changed for me now is when I feel it, I'm able to kind of acknowledge it, almost like say hi, like, "Hey, anxiety, what do you need
Yeah.
today?" Right?
It's
Like,
kind of weird. You could say it's even like, oh, it sounds so corny, but it's actually very effective.
it's so effective.
I'm not the only one doing this. This is parts work. Like this is established in Western psychology. It's not like I'm just here doing it willy-nilly on my own.
So let's actually get into that then.
So
So
yeah.
you said it's parts work. What
Yeah.
exactly is parts work?
Well, a lot of people are familiar with internal family systems. Richard Schwartz and a host of other people. Um, and that is a particular certification process. So I just want to name that when I talk about parts work, I talk more generally. Um, because it can be, for me, it's so much more personal than the process. And I'm not hating on IFS. I think it does amazing work. Um, in general, what parts work is it recognizes that we have this idea of a healthy self, a self that's in alignment. Some would say like my higher purpose, that I'm connected and I can feel the clarity, my intuition. And it's like the flow state. It's like I can just feel like I'm in it. Like this is my life. And then we have a lot of parts of us that are wounded, that have, as a result of trauma on the body, in our minds, have fragmented our self. And we are then responsible in the healing process. And to be, I argue that the healing process is so that we can then be in our most expansive, authentic, out of our nervous or stress response system person. Um, that process is by acknowledging and becoming aware, self-aware of all these parts that are diffused in our bodies, in our minds. Um, so, for instance, I talk about I have this part that's called the fiend. Call it the fiend. It's the part that is just it's just like a voracious appetite. It's because of anxiety. It's just when I used to feel anxiety, I would just consume food, like not even being aware of it. I'd go for runs, or I'd work really hard, but anything it was like to the max. And I call it the fiend because I didn't know how to stop. I had a part that's called the jester, like that part that comes out. So you can actually animate. The fun thing about parts, while it's can be difficult work, is you can animate them. And a benefit of that, which maybe you can speak to, is that so many of us are such self-judgmental. Like we have such high expectations. Musicians, artists have such high expectations of themselves, I found, and in my own self. And there can be so much severe judgment that it's all on us. It's all me. And in actuality, it's all these different parts that are trying to talk and that are creating the internal struggle. And when you can separate them, there's actually space to talk to them or have them talk amongst themselves to figure out what's going on. It creates space for conversation.
Hey everybody, I just want to let you know really quick that I hope you're really enjoying this episode and getting a lot out of Isaac's knowledge. And if that is the case, I have really good news. Isaac and I have actually been working on a course that's specifically about music-centered mindfulness. So how do we achieve our best possible creativity and make sure that the self-criticism in our head is not getting in the way of that goal, whether it's for actually playing and reaching our flow state, or whether it's for making sure we don't have negative emotions or feelings associated with our music. And again, the really cool thing is we have a course, and that course, as you are watching right now, is either A, about to be released, or B, released. And so you should absolutely make sure that you join the wait list. And if the course is already out, we're gonna have a very limited amount of slots. So be sure you check the link in the description and get signed up. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Of course. But for those listening, maybe how I might summarize then parts work is you know, as opposed to thinking of every behavioral pattern or emotional pattern as just a part of this kind of blobby whole that is you, you can actually think, wait a second, there's a part of me that has the same pattern that happens every time. So every time I get anxious, this kind of version of myself
Yeah.
takes the lead. Every time I am in a social context that makes me uncomfortable, this part takes the lead, and I always do this kind of social blunder, etc. And in identifying them as these kind of separate parts of you, you're essentially able to then, as you said, create space, but in a way almost the space for them to communicate with each other and say, hey, what do you need? Like you, who every time I'm in this weird social situation, runs your mouth and gets me into trouble, let's say. Why are you doing that?
What do you want? What do you need? Yeah, I mean, I think you brought it to the next step, which is understanding that all these parts have patterns. They have a character, almost like a characteristic profile, and a lot of these parts are behaving in like wounded ways, and they need the attention because they need love. They're feeling not valued. They're feeling insecure, so they keep on coming out at inopportune times to say like, "Hey, have you forgotten about me? I'm right here." And so this is my chance because it's patterned in for me to pop out, for me to come here at this moment because that's my pattern, and that's what, in a way, that this sense of self has allowed your own unique past and present and how you're playing yourself out or how you're playing your patterns out. This one comes out at a particular time in a particular context, which is usually based in your past, your childhood. So yeah, you did a great job of connecting the parts to then the patterns, the wounding patterns. Yeah,
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe just to give an example.
it's great. Yeah, examples are great.
Yeah, actually, instead of me giving an example, first, why don't I ask you if you could give us an example of like how a couple parts might, conceivably communicate with each other and how we might allow them to, uh, you know, change the narrative, so to speak.
Sure. When I have like a depressive part, for instance, let's talk about that because that's also a very prevalent one. A depressive part. When I have talked to it, and also a lot of it can be talking two parts talking, but I do a lot of work of talking to one part and then talking to me. So this like depressive part, again, we want to go back and repeat. This depressive part is acting a way where it's seeking love, safety, and belonging. And so somehow it's using that energy in a way that it believes that it's accomplishing that. So I would this depressive part, every part needs to be appreciated and validated. That's the first thing. So I know people are like, what is he about to do? Yeah, I'd be like, hi, depression. Thank you for showing up. I am so grateful that you have showed up in this moment, and I really want to hear what you have to say. It's important to me to hear you and listen. So I'm curious, um, what's going on for you, and that I can then I listen, and it can say a variety of things. Let's hear what it says. It's telling me I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this. That in my past, my depression has protected me from doing things um, because it feared that I would get rejected. So I didn't want me to take risks. Why don't you want me to take risks? Because I don't want you to fail. What a great way that my body, because again, my brain is attached to survival, not flourishing, that this depressive part then deactivates me. The stress response is to numb, to dissociate, to leave the situation And that can look like not able to get up. That can look like being in bed for days. That can look like I'm talking to you, but I'm actually not here. I'm somewhere else because something has become so overwhelming. And I can then elicit what it's trying to do for me. And I get it. And I can say, oh, that's why you're doing that. And then I can say, I appreciate you for doing that. And you've come a long way with me and you've gotten me here. And now I'm ready for something new. I'm curious how you feel about that. And that then can just like take the conversation further.
That's so much better than what I was going to give as an example. I mean, you actually just kind of walked us through the process a bit, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So actually, yeah, communicating
Yeah.
or allowing two parts of yourself to communicate with each other really. And obviously that's something that you as a coach help people through and walk people through.
You literally just got a session. Like that's the mini session example of like what happens in the work that I do that I find is once you get over some clients are like, wait, what do you want me to do? No, I don't know if you had that experience when you first started because it's been a little while ago. Do you remember?
I think I did a little bit.
Yeah,
You know, I
yeah.
had faith in you because I'd already known you.
Yeah.
But you know, at first, sure, I was like a little hesitant. Like maybe this sounds a little unexpected or out of left field. I'm skeptical,
Yeah.
right? I'm a skeptic.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
And a lot of us are.
Sure.
A lot of us are because we've been burned before. A lot of people, especially those parts that haven't been seen, they've been burned before. So there's a lot of resistance to like, oh, someone's actually gonna try and see me. I don't want to be seen. Like I've been burned. So I just like to tell people, the idea as within, so without, as above, so below. That like our outer reality, how we organize it, is similar to our inner reality. So you have friends out in this world who you create love, safety, and belonging with. It's no different inside, right? We have these friends who all have different personalities, different structures of being. Some are more resourced and have more capacity than others. The confident self that comes out, right? Like that is like the healthy, what I call like the self, the capital SELF self, the one in alignment. That is the assured one when we feel so good and so like in our element. And then we have the wounded parts that are just like our friends who we love, and you're like, yeah, you belong, and you have your bad days, like, and you have your patterns that I'm like, I want to support you with that. When we can apply that and bring it to ourselves, like it's the same, it's the same world is what I'm trying to say.
In a sense, you're also describing self-love, you know,
Yeah.
loving the different parts and allowing them their space to say what's needed as opposed to just eliciting this immediate and oftentimes unhealthy response. The example that I was thinking of bringing up was
Yeah.
really kind of like I think this was the moment that for me clicked with parts work.
Mm.
And it was actually when I had just played soccer for the first time in several years. And I don't see why anyone listening would know this, but I've had recurring groin injuries from playing soccer in college. And so finally I felt healthy enough and I went out and I actually played soccer and it went great. I didn't hurt myself. But then this part of me actually turned on because I was really frustrated with how I played the game.
Mhm.
Instead of being really happy about the fact that I had played and not hurt myself,
Mm.
I got completely overwhelmed with, I wasn't good enough,
Mhm.
and I was
Mhm.
frustrated by comparing myself to how fast I used to be or how much I could run, etc. And that part took over. And within a couple days, I had hurt myself at the gym and I didn't get to play a single game more in that
So
season.
this was the competitive part that we talked about that
Exactly.
came out.
Exactly. And I remember it being really huge for me because that competitive part is not limited to soccer. That competitive part is huge for me in music. And I've
Mhm.
had so many physical injuries related to music and playing the piano. And, just super quick summary, what you had me do, you walked me through a pretty intricate process, but by the end of it, the result was essentially this part of me that wanted to be the best had a communication with the part of me that understood that I needed to sometimes be held back, and that was, it's really frustrating, the competitive part, because that part really want doesn't understand. I don't understand. Other people don't get injured.
Mhm,
Why are they not getting injured and they get to just work as hard as they want?
mhm.
And I can't even work as hard as I want because I'm just getting injured. And so those two parts were able to have this amazing conversation, and the end result, it may sound simplistic, but it's different when you really feel it and you feel the change, was that competitive part kind of realized that it could continue to exist and feel that ferocious competitiveness, but actually, instead of ignoring the part that called for me to be more gentle and give my body time to heal, instead of ignoring it, it could actually become on that other part's team.
I mean, asset.
It's an asset. And so now it actually helps me whenever I feel that competitive spirit of, I want to be better. Well, it actually, now that energy directs directly toward the other part of me, which is, well, in order to experience that, I need to take care of my body and help myself. And that may sound cliche or simplistic to anyone who's listening, but really emotionally feeling that competitive energy channel into the other side of me, which normally that competitive side thought of as holding me back,
Yeah.
now they work as a team. And it's so much easier for me to mentally not lead myself into territory that's going to hurt myself, you know?
And that's huge. And I think what you keep saying explicitly, and I'm going to make it even more explicit, is it's hard. We're talking about felt experiences. We're talking about the fact that change of anxiety, of fear, is on a bodily level. Like that, our culture, as I understand and as I've done, research and readings in all psychological articles and in pop culture for psychology, like psychology today, there's not a lot of vocabulary to describe our felt experience that is widespread. And so we have I think, a limitation of words with the new, to me, a new paradigm of psychology, which is this embodied felt experience that is becoming more and more, thankfully, on the scene. It's becoming more of a trend, and we don't necessarily have the words to that can name when that change takes place, and our body literally reorients in a different way, and the felt experience is like, oh god, yeah, that's what relaxation is. My body can feel that. It can feel that relaxed. These parts are not quarreling, they understand each other. That's healing, man.
Yeah.
You
Beautifully
know?
said. And I want to just take a quick second to actually also give you a shout out, because so much of what we're talking about, as you said, is stuff that I have felt, you know, over the course of an hour of kind of emotional looking into myself with your guidance. So, for anyone who actually wants to try to work with you potentially and do some of this work with you, how can people find you?
I have a website, isaachoneywell.com. On there, you'll see my offerings. So you can sign up for one-on-one sessions there. I just want everyone to be their big, authentic, creative selves. And I think we need more people in that space rather than in like small and contained and safe. And I understand the reasons that happens, and I think that we can break free.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of feeling small and protecting oneself, another thing that we musicians face so much is the whole concept of just not feeling good enough, or imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah.
So I'm kind of
Mm.
curious if you have any thoughts about, how we can deal with that, any techniques or exercises, just whatever you might offer in terms of how we can deal with imposter syndrome and not feeling good enough, either to others or ourselves.
Hmm. Hmm. I hope people understand that there's a repetitive nature to effectively working with this part, all these parts. So unworthiness is a part, and it's often seen as not being good enough is often seen as like a core wound, not feeling valued. Like I don't have any value, and I've been there. It's a terrible feeling. It's like doesn't feel good. It brings on a lot of other secondary emotions, anxiety, depression, all these different sort of symptoms of unworthiness. And again, we can say, what purpose does it serve in the service of love, safety, and belonging? And as we talk about being small, is unworthiness is often like, well, I'm not worthy of what I want. I'm not worthy of what my dreams are. Well, those dreams are big. That's risky, you know. I can't do that gig. I'm not good enough for it. Wow, what an amazing way to keep you small and safe and survive. Again, how our bodies are organized towards that, it's beautiful. It's like a beautiful organism and system that now when people are feeling that, they can say, "Okay, thank you for really, really serving me to survive, and I'm ready to flourish. I'm ready to thrive." And so that unworthiness part can, be understood from that frame, and you can the best way is what I call embodied action. Just to the best way to then work with these wounded parts is to get yourself exposure little by little to situations that you can feel that part and be with that part and see that there is not a lot of direct threat, that you're going to have love, you're going to have safety, you're going to have belonging, but that requires you to be embodied, to feel your body, feel the sensations, and just be with them and address them and say, I got you. I'm here with you. I'm here for you. I know where you're here. I know you're feeling scared, and I got you. We're going to get through this. And in that way, you take on this like adult role. And these are like your kids in a sense, you could say.
In terms of, we've spoken now about imposter syndrome, and I kind of mentioned what we did in terms of parts work with my kind of internal competitive spirit.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to ask you about is, how do you deal with negative emotions that you feel toward your peers or even your friends or family due to a competitive spirit, right? So that's
It's a
something, of
tough
course,
one.
it's a tough one,
It's
and
a tough one.
it's
You don't want to, no one wants to feel that. I mean, that one that I know, I've never met someone be like, oh, I love feeling bad because my friend is succeeding. I love feeling jealous because my friend is succeeding. Like you want to celebrate your friend just like you want your friend to celebrate you. Right. I mean, that,
of course.
yeah, of course. Yeah. So you're asking me, what do you do? Well, one thing is, I don't have the frame of good or bad, negative or positive emotions, or feelings. I see them all as information and all as messengers. I've had the feeling of jealousy toward my friends, and I had it as early as high school, uh, in sports and in art, and it continued into my 20s, and then I realized when I began to experience emotions as neutral that this jealousy, the purpose it was serving was it was actually telling me what I wanted. It was saying that I was good enough if I wanted to be like my friend. And that was to be celebrated. And in that way, I could be like, oh, that jealousy is about me. It's not about my friend. So I could remove the charge between them. I could, instead of projecting jealousy onto them and saying, I'm jealous of them, I can say, I'm excited because I'm being told I can do that if I want to. And then I have the choice, which to me is freedom. I have the choice to be like, oh, I'm going to go do that. That separation then allows me to say, you're you, I'm me. What you're doing is awesome because I want to do that. And I could if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So it's, to me, for some it may feel subtle. Like that's a subtle distinction, but for me, it made all the difference. Once I was really able to take that, and that goes for all like emotions, is a sense of like, so many times we project anger onto people, we project blame onto people. The best we can do is to, is in terms of if we really want to thrive, is to have radical accountability and say that all of those things, if we're pointing at someone, again, there's three fingers pointing back, and that we can figure out, what is this saying about me and how can I metabolize it, or how can I understand it as a lesson that I can learn about myself, of where I want to go.
Hmm.
Or what wound I have. It depends, and it's complex when it gets there. But
Sure. I mean, no, there's so much incredible value in everything you just said. I mean, number one, looking at emotions as neutral and as information, as opposed to, oh, like I should feel good or bad about having this feeling inside, right? Because they're telling us something.
yeah,
Two, being able to recognize what it's telling you and then adjust that frame essentially and say, oh, this is information. It's telling me something. It's telling me, oh, I'm feeling this because I also believe I'm good enough to achieve this or have this, whatever
that
this is.
happens when you take that projection of jealousy and put that energetic, and put that, like, that energetic charge onto that person when it's not that person at all.
Hmm.
And that's a key point, is like to really be like, it's not about you. It's about me, and it's not selfish that it's about me. That's the other thing, is like people think like, oh, I'm angry at that person, and if you take that back, then I have to do it. It's almost selfish that it's about me, but it is, and that's okay, and it's actually healthy to do that so that the conflict there doesn't involve that person when it actually isn't about them. That's not to say that in interpersonal dynamics there is no accountability. There's no, like, someone messes up and needs to take accountability for how they hurt somebody. Like, I'm not saying that everything is about, like, there's so many layers to an interpersonal relationship. There's the, okay, I have to accept the complicity of my role in whatever happened. And so does that other person, if there is, accountability to be had when hurt occurs or a rupture in a relationship happens. So I'm not saying that, I'm saying that in addition to that, there can be cases where it is only about a projection that I have that I need to take because there is actually no interaction that is happening. That person doesn't know I'm jealous. Yeah, they may know because I'm just like, yeah, great show. And then it comes out that I'm like dealing with my own shit that's coming up. Right.
Sure. Sure. I just want to take a quick pause here to let you know that Isaac and I have actually been working for months now on putting together what I think is going to be an absolutely transformative course that is all about changing your relationship with your instrument, with music itself, with composition, just to make sure that you're actually having the most positive, enjoyable experience in making music and in hanging out with your musical peers, etc. The course is called Musician Rewired, and you can actually get on the wait list by joining using the link in the description of this video. So all I can say is that working with Isaac has been incredibly transformative for me. That's what inspired me to actually approach him about making this course together, and having his expertise on the team has been invaluable. So We're so incredibly excited for you to check this course out. Again, join the waitlist by using the link in the description. And the best news is that if you're on the waitlist, there are going to be some incredible goodies for the first group of people that join the course and those who are on the waitlist. So join right now. Let's get right back to the episode. All right, next question. So you mentioned, of course, that a lot of our jealousy actually might be coming from a place of, I feel that I deserve the same thing. But what if you're actually looking around at your peers and you feel like,
I
let's say,
wouldn't say that.
oh, okay.
I wouldn't say deserve. It's I can get there.
Okay, I see.
I can get there. It may take work, but it's the idea that it's showing you a possible pathway for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really important clarification.
Yeah. Deserve can create entitlement, and if entitlement energy can be, let's just say, nefarious. It can be a little sticky, and we don't have to get into it, but that's why I don't choose to use those words.
No, I think that's a great point, and maybe also pointing out, a word that I should try to erase from my vocabulary when talking about these things. Because so okay, so let me try again.
Yeah,
So,
see, here you go.
Then in other words, we've talked about jealousy because we feel that we could achieve something similar and we want that for ourselves as well as our friend, right?
Yeah.
What if it's actually coming from a different place, or what if we're experiencing rather maybe jealousy that our friend was able to get somewhere so quickly, or that we actually feel like we are just moving too slow. We look at those around us and they're achieving these things and maybe we feel like we are behind. So how does one deal with that feeling of maybe being left in the dust, or like you yourself are not achieving your goals fast enough?
It's a great question. The person who is perceiving themselves as going slower has a story, which I believe is a cultural story, that tells them that the pace they're going at isn't exactly the pace that they need to go at. And that then they compare to the people going faster because we have a correlation between fast and success. That's one key thing. The second key thing is that when you ask, well, what will success get you? Okay, it will get me fame, it'll get me likes, it'll get me into big parties, whatever. Okay, well, then what will that get you? Oh, that will get me the woman of my dreams, the man of my dreams, the person of my dreams. Okay, and it will get me all the money. Okay, well, what will that get you? Will get me the yacht that I want and the parties that I want. Okay, well, what will that get you? Well, that will get me out to the sea, then I won't have to work anymore. Well, will that get you? Okay, well, that will get me, and you keep on going until it's like, well, that will get me. I'll feel relaxed. Okay, so you want to feel relaxed. That's what you think. The idea is that you can get that going at that slow pace. You can actually live life relaxed going at that slow pace. But you have externalized that feeling and said, I can't get that until these things happen. I want to question that story.
So one thing that I wanted to ask you about, actually, one thing that I've struggled with, as obviously is writer's block. And sometimes it feels like I struggle with it for months, or maybe sometimes even almost in a strange way, years. So there may be like moments where I don't in those larger blocks of time, but sometimes it feels almost like this insurmountable wall, like this mental or creative block that I just can't get over. And no matter what I do, I can't actually sit down and just create something that feels right, for lack of a better term. So I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on writer's block in general, and any strategies we might employ to get through it.
All right, but can we go into it? Can we? Do you have writers? Can we just talk to your writers?
Yeah,
Can we,
let's do it.
Can we do it? Okay, great. Because I just want to talk to you first, but not the writer's block part. When you go into your creative space to create, compose lyrics or your notes, melodies, and you encounter this writer's block. Um, what I'm curious what you're trying to achieve. Like, what is the desire?
What a great question. Because it's funny, as I think of my answer, I think I already see problems. But I think my answer would, if I'm being completely honest, it would be write something so incredible that I feel amazing about it representing me as an artist, and that all of my peers will find it uniquely mesmerizing and that everyone will love it. Or a lot of people at least.
Yeah. Okay. So you're already seeing what's happening with this.
Yeah, and I think in some ways the only reason I was able to just answer that so honestly is because of my improved self-awareness. But when you asked me that question, I realized like I went a couple layers deeper and I was like, what am I actually aiming to do when I sit down? And I realized I'm not just aiming to sit down and my goal is make something. My goal is everything that I just said, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. We're often imposing expectations, and some of them are conscious and some of them are unconscious. So I think of writer's block sometimes as this mythical force that is guiding us toward our true expression. And unfortunately, in our culture where there's to me, a narrowness of what it means to be a creative, that we have to create a certain product in order to be seen, I think is so debilitating to the actual expansiveness, the expressiveness, the spirit that lives within us and is dying to be expressed. And I think that, as creatives, when we're put into a box of what we're supposed to make, a part of like, I'm not surprised that there are issues of health, because we're being asked to do something when we know deep down we're asked to be in this lane, and we're like, I don't know what lane I'm gonna be in. That's what happens when you receive. When you receive, you don't know where you're gonna go. But when you're allowed to do that and you give yourself permission, when you write a song that you define as classical, that the world would say that's a classical song. You're like, well, actually, that's just an expression of what came through me. You can like it or not, but that's what it is. And when we neutralize interpretation of our creative process, that's what I think writer's block is attempting to do. Is it's saying, I'm not, in a sense, going to allow you to write in the way that your ego wants. I want you to write in the way that your soul wants. And it's really hard when you're a working musician and you have limited time. And um, I think that in that way, systemic forces work against soul, work against spirit for creatives, and it's a really unfortunate situation to that inhibits our abilities and creates these writing blocks. At the same time, I think that when you know that, and you say you assume that that is what I'm saying is true, and we want to assume that, then you can talk to this writing block and say, yeah, I kind of get that you want me to be this ever expansive being, and I have a deadline to get these songs out if I'm like writing an album for a record company or whatever it is. Um, how can we work together? and you can have some alignment. Just for me, I never had that example I gave. I never had to deal with it, but I have felt the pressure of making songs that people love. But I try not to limit myself to that. So,
Yeah, so in that case, in a sense, the actionable step would be accept the part of ourselves that is the creative block, the writer's block, and have a conversation with it. If we kind of broke it down to the actionable step here.
the other actionable step is, can you and do you have the space to go deeper and go bigger and more expansive and not limit yourself in ways that there could be cultural conditionings to say you're supposed to be this and you're supposed to be that and this type of music you're supposed to make. If you want to do that, if that's who you want to be, then the actual step is like, understand this writer's block and talk with it and speak with it and see how you can work with it. Me, because of who I am, I want to go to that. I want to find the time to go and be my most creative self and say, screw all the labels, screw all the categories. That's just me. I have no judgment for people who don't choose that. But that would also be an actionable step if you could do that.
Hey, I just want to jump in here real quick to remind anybody watching this right now that nothing in this episode should be considered personal mental health advice, guidance, counseling, or therapy. Everything in this episode is for informational and inspirational purposes only. Neither the host, myself, or our guest, Isaac, are clinically licensed professionals. So if you think you might be suffering from any kind of mental health issue or disorder, again, of any kind, please be sure to reach out to a clinically licensed medical professional. All right, let's get right back to it. What are some immediate, small, bite-sized, actionable steps that people can take? And two,
Okay.
what are some ways that we can quantify our progress?
To the first question, the simple actionable things, the foundation of healing is self awareness, becoming a witness to our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior in a non judgmental, curious way that allows them to kind of live outside of us. So, again, we're witnessing, we're developing this parallel perspective while we're also watching. And in doing so, with non judgment and curiosity, we they don't run away. They don't get shamed. They don't get embarrassed. They don't get judged. That's the only way we can honestly take an inventory of what's happening, what's coming through us. The thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So that's the first thing I would recommend, and that you can set a timer every day. If you struggle to really see and develop this witness, then put on a clock that goes off once, 3, 5, 7, however many times you can hold it without it overwhelming you. And when that clock goes off, you just observe what's going on for you. What are your thoughts? What is the emotional tenor of that moment? What are you doing? Um, Key to this again is non-judgment and curiosity. And once you begin to develop that, you'll begin to see your patterns. The second thing is, if you're not accepting who you are, start accepting who you are. The paradox of healing is, only through accepting who you are can you change. It takes guts, it takes courage to do that inventory, that self awareness inventory. And accepting, when you watch yourself, is what's going to then get you to understand those patterns and heal those patterns and move forward. So, people make fun of gratitude practices. I don't. I take them seriously. I say something every night of how I'm grateful for whatever it is in my life that came up that day, who's in my life, who's supporting me, and allowing for that opportunity to, for those gratitudes to be heard. The other thing that's I think is an actionable step is like watching how you talk to yourself. People also make fun in the world of like the thing is, would you talk to your friend that way? Well, no, but okay, well, that's so cliche. Yeah, well, I don't care if it's cliche or not. I wouldn't talk to myself I wouldn't talk to my friend as I talked to myself in the past. And I can say like right now, my thoughts, because I've had this gratitude practice, because I accepted myself, my whole entire thought that I have, and my thought process, the thoughts that go to my head are vastly different than 5 years ago. And no one can know that but me. So how do you track that? To your next question, um, you can track it by becoming the mad scientist who is constantly experimenting, um, first by watching themselves and then seeing if they can change that behavior. If you're unable to change that behavior, you probably need to continue to watch yourself and figure out what's going on in that situation and who isn't being seen, what parts aren't being seen, what parts aren't being heard and loved and brought in to belong to you because they're still acting out. The self awareness is in itself its own feedback mechanism that as I am witnessing myself, that witness becomes the tracker. And that witness says, well, after you do something, you get to say to yourself, all right, that was still part of a pattern because I'm feeling this same way. I'm feeling shame again. I'm feeling this. This is part of the pattern. I'm feeling insecure. This is part of a pattern. All right. So that self-awareness is then creating the tracking system. And that's in and of itself a wonderful benefit. That's what I've used to track the changes.
Sure. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. So, in other words, in cultivating self awareness, one action step is literally set timers for yourself every day for however many times you're comfortable, basically to remind yourself to take a few minutes to cultivate self awareness and take a bit more of a bird's eye view on what's going on in my mind right now.
Mhm.
What am I feeling in my body right now? And in terms of feeling or even tracking that change, um, in taking those moments, the more self aware you become, the more you will recognize maybe actually breaking some patterns that you don't want to have. Maybe thoughts that you didn't have before, perspectives you didn't have before. And so, in a sense, the two work hand in hand to cultivate that feeling of both self awareness and also the feeling of witnessing change.
Witnessing change, tracking and witnessing because it will come. Yeah. The other thing I just want to mention is the important piece of embodiment. I wouldn't be where I am today without 6 years now of a continued embodiment practice that supported me to fix the and dissolve the separation between mind and body. That there is no difference. The language we have sucks because it doesn't allow us to talk about the oneness of our being, that mind and body are not separate. And there's a history I won't go into, but if you want to know, we can talk about it later of why that happened. This embodiment practice can be like, well, what is an embodiment practice? It's beginning to get into your body, using self awareness while you're moving. Like when I do this, and listeners can't see, but I'm moving my hand in a certain way, I'm feeling what my hand is doing. I'm trying to put awareness into this hand, into the finger, so it makes this sort of flowing action. And the more then if I add my arm, my shoulder, or sort of my elbow up to my shoulder, how attuned can I be? This embodiment is about the disconnection between the parts. Just like the mind body is a separation of parts, our body has been separated through language into parts when it is a totally connected being that is actually connected to this couch, which then by default is connected to you. That's essential in my healing. Is beginning to, and I was an athlete, and even as an athlete, I just used my body. And you know that. I mean, you understand that. But the ability to then come back to my body 10 years later and actually feel the wisdom of it and use that wisdom in service of my healing is actually one of the biggest things that has promoted my mental health. And it's hard to describe because it's a felt experience. And it has to do, I use the language of nervous system regulation to describe that my tolerance for discomfort has, so I don't go into my stress response, has widened significantly. So I can stay in discomfort and be in connection still with people, with myself, without numbing out or running to compulsions or running into addictions and things like that. And that's through the process of embodiment.
Well, I think we are approaching that time limit of running out of steam here.
Yes, yes, the midnight hour.
Yeah.
Burning the midnight, what do they say?
Midnight candle?
Burning the midnight
Oil. Midnight oil.
Midnight oil. Oh, we totally are.
All right, Isaac. Well, thank you so much for your thoughts on literally everything that we've spoken about today. Obviously, I've had the pleasure of working with you personally, but I hope that this episode from Jazz Lab, the podcast, um, gives people a lot of, at the very least, wonderful food for thought that will have a really wonderful positive effect on them. A lot of what was chatted about today has helped me immensely. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and
Pleasure.
and for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. No, it's been I've had a wonderful time sharing my experience and what I know in the healing process
Of course.
through my own journey and through supporting others in their journey. It's quite grateful.
Well, I'm certainly grateful to have you on. And of course, I should not forget to mention that our course is going to be coming out soon. And
Yeah.
it goes very in depth into a lot of what we talked about today.
Yeah, even deeper.
It even deeper and also in a much more just structured, outlined, step-by-step methodology that we worked really, really hard to create to make sure that it would be really helpful to you. So if you're interested in checking that out, the link for the waitlist is in the description. And again, by being on the waitlist, you are going to get first dibs on new info about the course, also potential other great bonuses as well. So get on that waitlist. And last but not least, check out IsaacHunnewell.com, Hunnewell, for more info about potentially working with Isaac one-on-one. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. If you learned anything useful in this video, please click that subscribe button. Really helps me build up the channel. And my promise to you is that I will continue to bring on awesome guests like Isaac who will have incredible knowledge to share with you all. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.